can America, being a consumer economy, can they really, in fact, afford this kind of friction with the Chinese? And if not, does this also go to prove a point that there may be more of a bark here than a bite?
Yeah, that's a point that I like to underscore. If you look at the fine print, at the footnotes in these agreements, you'll see that a lot of goods are exempt. So, for example, Indian pharmaceuticals and IT are exempt from these exorbitant tariffs. It affects gems and it affects various other sectors, but not the ones that Americans most enjoy the benefits from. No American wants to pay $3,000 for an iPhone. Um, which so those that would hurt Trump's base and therefore hurt Trump and that part of the Republican Party in the U.S. And the same is true of China too. The reason why it hasn't slapped the 50% tariffs on China, which is the principal adversary in all of this, is that the supply chains are such that simply the American consumer would be terribly hurt by the impact economically. And so we see, again, when we look at the fine print and we get beyond the headlines, as important as the headlines are, when we get behind the headlines, we see that these tariffs are not quite what they're sometimes made out to be. There are loopholes, there are exemptions, and those reflect not only geopolitical concerns on the part of Washington, but domestic political concerns and interests as well. And so we're not, when I look at the Indian tariffs in particular, the 25% originally were about getting India to open up its internal market. Well, guess what? Prime Minister Modi has basically started to rerun 1990, 1991 in terms of the license and quota raj disappearing. We see the reforms of the GST, for example, and some other. There are limits. Prime Minister Modi can't do certain things with respect to certain agricultural sectors and the dairy sector, but he can do a lot of other things that will liberalize the Indian market and make it more accessible to American firms. So that's a good development. One that doesn't get a lot of, at least on this side of the world, doesn't get a lot of airtime. People don't talk about that all that much. So in terms of the underlying sources of friction between India and the US, which gave rise to the first 25% tariffs, I think those are likely to be addressed over time and likely to go away. The thing with Russia and Russian oil, India is doing what is in India's best interest, which is buying cheap crude oil and gas, refining it, using it domestically, and selling the surplus internationally at a profit. What firm, what country, what person on the planet wouldn't do the same given half the chance? And they're not financing the Russian war. The Russian war is being financed in part by sales of the various commodities, including potash, which nobody talks about, to China, a fertilizer, but also goods to the United States. So to single out India in this respect, I think, to use a term that I and others have used, is a bit more of a temper tantrum than it is a sound grand strategy. And my colleague is right. This is an aberration. It's a passing moment. Trump will be gone sooner or later. And I don't think things will return to normal, but I think the pendulum will swing back in terms of closer Indian-American relations economically and geopolitically. And we're likely to see that play out in the next SCO Summit and the one after that and the one after that.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.